Mactan Cebu International Airport. It's the second busiest airport in the Philippines, serving the Queen City as a jump-off point to various exotic islands in the country. Home to the world's friendliest resort airport, it handles millions of travelers and tourists, with strong passenger movement increasing every single year. Up until the country struck by the pandemic, that this airport ceased its operations, closing down services to all commercial flights. Find out what's happening lately at Cebu's premier gateway as terminals once again opens its doors and travel resumes after months of lockdown. Right here on Airline Travel and Airports. What seemed to be a vibrant establishment left desolated for some time is once again enticing passengers, as well as people curious to take a look how things are in this airport. With hours to spare before my flight back to Manila, I requested a visit to the international side, at Terminal 2, where Cebu-based travel buddy Josh showing me around what used to be the dynamic areas of this airport, now bare and soundless in contrast to the near-festive atmosphere I've experienced when I passed through its halls the last time. With not much action happening, we decided to move on, checking other areas where we might find something of interest. Ahead of us are most probably well-wishers, seeing off departing family members, taking one of the very few international flights leaving from this massive but empty terminal. Almost no check-in counters open, and with not much airport employees found, except for one area at the far end of the departure hall, where only about a handful of passengers are seen, fortunate enough to be flying out of this country during these difficult times. Despite the eye-catching and innovative design, the lingering effects of the pandemic leaves an almost barren airport, and without much to see from what used to be a bustling site filled with travelers, we instead move on to the next terminal. Later, I return back to the airport, this time at Terminal 1, where I'm catching my afternoon flight back to Manila after accomplishing some important tasks here in Cebu. Wearing the required face mask and face shield, I begin my journey starting from departures, only to notice that there aren't many travelers around. Despite the resumption of commercial flights, strict travel restrictions and laborious requirements make it difficult for people to travel, and along with fear of contracting the virus, it's no surprise to see a lot less people in the airport during these times. Though I'm glad to see fellow travelers checking in on the same flight as mine, it seems it's still not enough to help the airline industry recover. But it's good to know that the situation is somehow improving and that air travel is again slowly picking up. As required, I present my airline ticket, IDs, and latest swab test result. And as a returning resident in Manila, I was only asked about my activities here in Cebu, how long I've stayed here, what the contents of my luggage were, and I was shortly issued my boarding pass. Along with it is a form for contact tracing, which I need to fill out and submit upon boarding. Moving ahead, I make my way to the gates, passing by a number of shops which may be temporarily closed at the moment, a harsh reminder of the pandemic and its devastating effects, particularly on the local economy. Soon I pass through another security check, breezing through it for being only among the few travelers flying out today from this airport. With my boarding pass scanned and verified, I make my way to the familiar area of the gates, only to find a heartbreaking sight. The vibrant and jam-packed gate area that I used to see is now left literally empty of passengers. There are no shops open, no bars or restaurants, not one seat or table occupied by a passenger. The Queen City's gateway and springboard to different islands in the Philippines is now an eerie sight to see. What used to be spaces in the ramp full of movement and activities are now simply treated as a parking lot for aircraft. Downhearted at the current situation, I continue to explore some areas at the airport, recalling memories of how life here was festive, energetic, and fast-paced. It seems that the further I go, the gloomier things got for me. The busy corridors I used to know are now dull and lifeless, with empty hallways and a closed lounge being the only ones greeting me as I inspect the lonely corners of this airport. As a passenger flying business class in today's flight, what pains me more isn't the lounge being closed or inaccessible, but rather the thought of how thousands of jobs that depend on tourism can easily be wiped out by the pandemic. The once beating heart of Cebu City's tourism industry for now has become what some would call as a ghost town, with only lightings and sound of air conditioners trying to keep the airport looking up and alive despite the absence of life. As I turn back, I can only sigh in disbelief, feeling the harsh aftermath of the outbreak getting worse and worse the longer I witness what has become of this airport. Curious, I went further to see one of this terminal's busiest gates, located one floor below. The gates that I used to see then being swarmed by people is now left quiet and secluded, a far cry from the hurried atmosphere it used to have. The place that usually handled the boarding of one flight to another in quick succession is now locked up and closed, with empty seats staring face to face with parked planes in front of them. As I made my way to another side of Terminal 1, my grief suddenly turns to a feeling of hope. It's on this side of the airport where I find fellow travelers either coming in or just simply seated and waiting for the second and last flight of the day. Like finding an oasis in a desert, finally, this airport is seen filling up with life. However struggling, some retailers still manage to hang on and cater to travelers for last-minute purchases of gifts and souvenirs. Despite the low number of passengers during these times, it's business as usual, with many stalls putting up a good fight over the effects of the outbreak. With drastic steps to widen retail offers, no matter how slow, these establishments convey that things are bound to recover. Before the crisis, I somewhat disliked the inconvenience of a crowded airport, but after months of being deprived of air travel, I now appreciate the sight of having people around, with their presence alone contributing a great deal of help to the airline industry. The nearer I got to my assigned gate, all the more I found relief to see how travel is gradually picking up. As boarding begins, I pass by more and more people making their way to line up. It sure is nice to see passenger load is good rather than an almost empty flight. Soon it was time to present my boarding pass, along with my ID and a filled-up contract tracing form. After verification, I'm cleared and good to go, eventually making my way to our A321 aircraft bound for Manila. Along with a new normal in air travel, crew members are seen in personal protective suits, and despite the huge changes, service from the heart remains the same. As I reach my seat, well, I sanitize it a bit using my small bottle of disinfectant, just to make sure. Now these are little things you need these days to help you keep safe. As more and more passengers continue to come in, I settle comfortably in my seat, observing what goes on, especially outside, particularly baggage handlers, as they load cargo and luggage into the aircraft. And while the cabin goes through further preparations, a crew member asks me if my preferred snack to be served later during flight, with a welcome drink of bottled orange juice handed out to help me get refreshed before we go. Shortly, our plane is pushed back from the gate, with one side of the ramp appearing to look like a parking lot full of aircraft from a distance. Safety demos performed even when I realized I'm the only passenger in this section. As we started taxiing, I turned to take another look at Cebu's airport, lonely as it seems but still magnificent. And finally, we're all good to go and we're taking off for Manila. We were up in the air before we knew it, and as quick as the seatbelt sign was turned off, crew members are up and about. Meanwhile, I make a quick peek at the main cabin to check what's happening, and serving of snacks have just started the moment I got to the back. Seeing crew members serving in their protective suits is something new, and it's something we need to get used to while the pandemic's still around. Once done serving the main cabin, I just had to ask a crew member about their new getup, curious if they're comfortable wearing them during flight.
Wala pa mainit to. Sir, second leg. Fourth leg na sir. For today? Yes sir. Ano, sa puso ko lang. Kasi kumagaya sa kumagaya. Yes sir. Thank you for being frontline. Yes sir. Sige sir. Pinapalat yung ano yun sir. Insert ka na. Thank you.
Well, it's good to know that crew member Nid Slim watches my vlogs. And so back to my seat up front I go, passing by rows of occupied seats in an otherwise empty flight. Now it's just me here, all alone at the business class section where I have all the space to myself. The moment I got to my seat, a crew member comes out with a tray, handing out the snacks I chose for today's flight, Mediterranean chicken wraps. For business class flyers, this is something you need to get used to. No meals in porcelain or bone china, no silverwares, no drinks in crystal glasses. These days, what you see served here is what you'll most likely get. One nice treat having my small meal at 30,000 feet is getting a good view outside my window. And after getting enough of seeing those small group of islands in the middle of the sea, I take the time to stand up and stretch. With the business class section all to me, I can freely stand up and walk around a bit, observing what's around and savoring my time here. Now this is something I can rarely do, especially back then when there was no outbreak and the seats here were mostly occupied. For now, I'm just enjoying this treat of having the entire section all exclusive to me.
Gentlemen, the fasten seatbelt sign has been switched on. For your safety, please make sure that your seatbelts are securely fastened. Thank you.
We were soon descending into Manila, passing by the magnificent view of Pililla Wind Farm situated in the province of Rizal. And not too long after that, we were already touching down in Manila. Finally, I'm back home after my mission in Cebu. As a returning resident taking a domestic flight, I need not present any documents upon arrival. With Manila now on general community quarantine, what's expected are temperature checks upon leaving the airport. But it's still good to be updated from time to time with what's happening, as travel requirements are still subject to change, depending on the situation. These days, it's still best to stay informed and take precautionary measures wherever you go. Keeping that in mind, I work my way towards baggage claim, still doing the same stuff I do even before the pandemic, watching planes parked along the way and intermittently stopping to take photos of each plane I come across. Yup, it's not only inside the aircraft where you see people wearing protective suits. These times, it's just common to see them around the airport, and it's just something that you'll get used to. Now all I gotta do next is go down to collect my luggage. This is how it's like now at Terminal 2's arrivals. Strangely quiet despite the presence of people waiting for their luggage to show up. No sight of people squeezing their way to collect their bags, things are just somewhat relaxed. What's to worry about is that for now, you can't book a ride on car services like Grab. Passengers who have no one to pick them up are simply forced to take the airport's coupon taxi or the yellow metered cab. Oh well, one thing in common seeing fellow frontliners at arrivals is that after a long day, we just want to go home. Still hoping that things will get better soon. This is Mitch Young. Thank you very much for watching.